I'm just waiting for the Doctor music, the Doctor Evil music to cue.
Ha!
Dun 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 dun. Hey Wade.
Yeah. So yeah, how's life treating you? We've been off for a little while.
Yep, we have, because we here at Mysterium Philippines have been busy on the front lines. But we haven't forgotten our beloved Belial and the show we tribute to him, Magic.tv. Coming successfully from a monumental success that was TarotCon 2024. Very thankful, very happy. And in the words of my dear friend and mentor, Wade Long, life is good.
Life is always good.
So, you know what, bro? After all that happened, I did want to have a discussion about you, because I know there's a lot in line with the topic we're having today, especially in the OTO and Thelema. And the topic today is about magical politics. And I could think of a few good people I'd love to have as a guest, but I couldn't get them on time. Like amazing people like Marco Visconti. You know, he's a great guy when he understands not the political running for office, but the internal political struggles that magicians go through. And today, I wanted to talk to you about this topic with our guests as a Magic.tv presents, because it's a reality. The political climate of a group of us working, of event, stuff like that, could make or break currents, groups, belief systems. And I know there's a lot in Thelema, a lot of magical politics, and even here in the Philippines with TarotCon, there was a shit ton of magical politics. And I wanted to get your personal understanding on it. I wanted to talk about what can we expect the deeper we get into occultism, but more importantly, what can we do on a magical level?
Well, magical politics is a lot like regular politics.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're trying to run a coven or a lodge or a cabal, or the Temple of Set had their own any sort of magical grouping, you're going to have to deal with all the same problems that you deal with in regular politics. First of all, getting people on board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where do you find people for your group? How do you vet them? Do you just personally? I like to not say, well, I want to start with 13 people.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start with a couple people that have proven themselves, that you know, that you trust, that you get along with, and just add people as they come up. As you see someone who sort of makes their bones, you can bring them on board. Because otherwise you end up with, if you're just trying to fill seats, you end up with, oh my God, like the US president right now, or the incoming president, just filling his cabinet with random assholes that are only there because they're loyalists. You know, you've got the guy who's going to be in charge of the FBI has never worked in law enforcement. You've got people there that are convicted felons. He's just filling seats. So you don't want to do this with your coven. There's funny thing, dude. I actually found in my library, there's a book
Coven
on exactly this thing.
Yeah. That was one of the first books about running a coven. I remember that.
Yeah, it's one of the only books on it. I haven't seen a lot of them.
There was another one by Greer called Running a Magical Lodge. And it
I believe, yeah.
That was an okay one too. But you know, another thing about it, like, we want to go official and say this on Magic.tv. Although we have our own personal political beliefs, we respect the political beliefs of everyone, because respect is the beginning of all forms of growth. But you know, it's funny because there's one thing though about magical politics that's present in magical politics that's not present in regular politics. And I coined this term from an asshole who wrote a book when I was around 14. And I remember this term, and it stuck with me all my life. And when you're dealing with magical politics, you tend to see a lot of astral opposition. Do you remember that term that you wrote, Wade?
There is that.
Okay. In other words, like, unlike, okay, I'm running as Democrat, he's running as Republican, it's just votes. There is an unseen element. You know what I mean? That people are trying to fuck with your shit. And it gets like, you know what I mean? It gets really irritating because it's like, well, I'm going to do Wade Long Pagan Fest, but then the people from Alpha Fest don't like it. And then there's like this energetic pushback that it's kind of like unintentional magic. And it's like cock blocking what you're trying to do. And it gets you like, hey, I'm not trying to hurt anybody here. Why are you sending this bad juju my way? Why is these bad things happening? From your experience, has this happened to you as a magician?
When I talk about things like astral opposition, it's not always another person working against you.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, sometimes it's like the difference between a cleansing and an uncrossing. Okay, if you have long hair, I used to have long hair. It's going to get tangled up. Someone didn't come along and tie knots in my hair.
Yeah.
But it gets tangled up. So it's like if you're trying to walk through a pool, like a swimming pool, and you're walking, and you're doing okay, and then you try to run, well, you're going to have a lot more resistance just because you're trying to do something bigger. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're trying to get a group of magicians all on the same page, you're going to run into a lot, because these are people that have a much higher vibration of energy, have a lot more of it. So they're going to end up tangling with each other, even if they're not intending to do it.
That much is true. And another thing I've observed too is that the territorialism in people sometimes can be borderline immature. Like, remember, a lot of people say that a lot of magic begins off of intention. And when you go, let's say I go into the Bay Area, you know what I mean? And I just want to put up a school of magic. There's nothing wrong with that. But the people already there, they're like, well, wait a minute, we're doing that. What makes you think you have the right to do this? You know what I mean? And then in the end, what ends up happening is that intention that they're sending towards this is actually getting in the way of what we're trying to do. Yeah,
there's that jealousy that of from other people, and there's always going to be that. Is it like, well, this guy's studying coven. Are they going to start taking my people away? How's that going to work? Are they going to step on my toes? What's the territory? Where are the lines drawn? It becomes a huge issue with jealousy.
So
people are just terrible.
But here's the thing, too. It can also get very, very frustrating for us who are trying to build something new. You know, like example with TarotCon, I met several kinds of resistance. I met people who were trying to do shit. I knew it. I also met people who were using the internet to try to shut us down. Like people were literally reporting the TarotCon pages, getting our social media blocked arbitrarily just to algorithm bust us. But the worst of it all was the fact that like there are people who are just like, they're boycotting it. They're sending bad energy to it. They don't want to support it. Not because it's bad, but because it wasn't them. It's just plain envy. Now, Wade, I wanted to ask you, coming from you, and I'm going to turn off my camera just for a second, but I'm still here. What would you do? What's your approach when people are doing this to something that you're trying to do? What would Wade Long's approach be?
Well, they say running a coven is like trying to herd cats, which that's an old cliche. But the thing is, herding cats is actually pretty easy. Herding sheep, you go behind them and you poke them in the butt with a stick and you kind of tap them, and that's what the staff is for. But herding cats, if you go out in your kitchen and you open a can of tuna, all of your cats are going to be there, and probably a few that aren't yours. So you have, instead of going behind them and trying to push them forward, you have to give them a common goal. And it's the same thing with a coven. You have to have a common agenda. You have to have everybody on the same page after one specific thing. And if they're like, well, okay, if we just want to get our degrees and hive off another coven, fine. But if everyone is there to say, well, okay, these are my friends, we're just doing this because we enjoy each other's company and it's magical and we enjoy magic, you got to have a common goal.
True. If
you don't have a common goal, if you have even one person on a different page, that can mess up your whole gear.
That's actually very true, because I've actually observed as a magical community leader myself here in the Philippines. Yeah, it takes one person to fuck everything up. And one thing I'll share with our viewers is like my approach is this. I have courses that I offer to the public, people who want to learn to develop their intuition and people who want to learn to read the tarot. And anyone and their mothers can enroll into that. However, if you want to learn the deeper things that I have to teach, there is a certain level of screening before I start teaching people the deeper stuff. And I've noticed that like through that, you're kind of building not a coven, because I'm not a witch, but kind of like a magical circle of sorts. However, if you are careless with the people you let into that, it just takes one typhoid Mary to ruin it all. So my vision has always been, as a magical community leader, is I have a vision of a better tomorrow for the people I'm working with, and I want to work with them to bring them to it. I'm not just here to sit like, I am the Lord Commander, you bow before me. No, that's not how it works. I tell people, look, I have a dream of a TarotCon. I have a dream of a book publishing for us all, a web series, and I want to help bring you guys to that reality. That's what leadership is about. What gets dickish is when you're trying to do that, and there are people who are cock blocking it. Like case in point, TarotCon. The poor Marcus Katz, it got so resistant that his flight was delayed by a day in Dubai, day before TarotCon. You see what I mean? It's like one thing after another was like, what the fuck? And what I was asking is like, and I'm not even talking about the internals, because sometimes we can control the internals. It's kind of like the external shit. You know what I mean? The external stuff, the lightning, the little jinxes and shit. It just gets on your nerves. And as a practicing magician, I have my own ways, but I wanted to ask you, what would you do to shield an event, a group, a working from that external energy so that it gets to its end goal?
Honestly, I would kind of keep that focus to I would focus on the goal instead of the way. Like if I was doing sigil magic or manifestation or anything, I would have it all focused on the goal rather than try to keep the road clear, because the road will clear itself once the goal is, firmly established. At least in my experience, I've also found that there's times that when I'm focused on the goal, the road will move in front of me. It'll change. It'll go this way. It goes that way. And I just kind of follow the road.
Yeah.
And then and sometimes I find out later, like, oh man, if I had gone the way I was planning, all this other stuff would have happened to me. And that's not always good.
Yeah. It's kind of like a positive diversion.
Exactly. You gotta stay you have to stay focused on the goal and let the road take you where it's gonna.
So with that being said, when you're putting up a magical group, or if you're doing something for like a big event, like example, like something as big as Pantheacon or something like that, or if you're putting up a big organization in a new town, what would the significance of ritual be in doing something like that? Would you personally, I mean, I have my own answers. We're just doing this, guys, to share with you guys what we would do. Would you personally say, all right, we're magicians, so we should be responsible in what we practice. And, we have these rituals. We can do certain rituals to ritualize our commitment to this. Is that something you would do? Or is it something like, nah, the hell with it. Let's just focus on the physicality of the event.
Well, something we used to do at, actually we did it at the Ancient Ways Festival and at Pantheacon. I don't know what other pagan festivals do or conferences. There was always an opening ritual.
Okay.
And then a closing ritual at the end. But the opening ritual was sort of to open that space and make sure that it stays active. So that, and not everybody, attended these rituals, but a lot of people would go there, and it's sort of like, okay, major league butt kicking starts right now. And that was the whole thing. Sort of opened that space and kept it open, and sort of giving the event or the goal, whatever your overall goal is, giving it its own life that starts right there at the beginning.
Would you do that from a thelemic approach or a Temple of Set approach? I mean, like, what would be your regular approach to that?
Me personally, I mean, it depends on what the theme of the gathering is.
So, like, let's say in another timeline, Wade and Rob decides to do Magickal 2099 in San Francisco, California, on Hayton Ashbury. Would you say let's go Palo Mayombe? Would you say let's do a thelemic? I don't know anything about Thelema. Would we do a Golden Dawn first degree opening? Would we do an Enochian call? What would your go-to be?
I would probably do what we did at one of the, it was one of the Ancient Ways festivals. They had people come up from different traditions, and each person they had like someone do an opening ritual. They did like a basic, it was a variation on the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. And then each person that came up from a different tradition did, like, there was somebody that they went around the circle and they opened all the rune stones going around. But it was a variety of traditions. And then I came up last and I did the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire, which was actually kind of neat because it was cool because it was like, oh my God, it was like an 80-foot circle. It was huge and there was a bonfire in the middle, which is right in the middle, which is unfortunate seeing as you start the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire in the center of the circle.
Wow.
We had to work around it. But it was really something because then you got everybody and every tradition involved in your opening ritual.
I honestly would like to pick Scott Michael Stenwick's brain as to which rituals he think would be apt for something like that, because he's really good when it comes to his operant field magic, and we should have him on again. But like, here's another thing I'm going to tell you too. Like, with regards to magical politics, if you're dealing with groups, you're dealing with people. I like to tell people time and time again that you're also dealing with their energies, whether you like it or not. You will be affected by the energies of the people you work with, and you will also affect the energies of the people you work with. And one thing I like to tell people is, if you are not careful who you are collaborating with, their energy could make or break the endeavor. I tell people that the energy of support is undeniable. It's also indescribable. When you know you're being supported by someone, you know it. I mean, you really, really know it. You can feel it. Even if they're not next to you, even if they're not with you physically, you feel supported. Versus if you have people who are claiming to support you, but they are actually sharpening the knife that they're going to stick in your back, you're also going to feel that as well. You know what I mean? Like I tell ladies, it's like when you meet a guy who's just trying to get in your pants and he tells you he loves you. You know what I mean? Well, the words say he loves you, but his energy says otherwise. So the next thing I wanted to say is this, like, the goal is important, but I also tell people about this too, that like leadership in a magical level, okay, is not unlike community levels. Because I mean, I know some amazing magicians who could not lead if their lives depended on it. Like, you're a great magician, but your leadership sucks balls. I know some great leaders who would make amazing magicians. They just don't have interest in magic. So when you're in a position of leadership in magic, especially with magical politics, remember, the welfare of the people with you and under you is in your hands. And if you're the kind of person that makes people feel expendable, then you're not going to last long in the magical political scene. But there is another thing I wanted to share, okay, when it comes to the whole magical politic thing, which is this. When you are trying to do a big thing in the magical world, you will feel what I call the burden. You know what the burden is, Wade?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the weight, the esoteric, the energetic weight of it all. And you cannot just sleep it off. You cannot walk it off. You can't work it out. You can't caffeine it out. It's like you have this aura to you and you're plugged into something bigger, but it's all now on you. Like, there was this show a couple of years ago called The Borgias. Did you ever see it?
No, but I was aware of it.
Okay. And there was a scene where Jeremy Irons was finally anointed as the Pope of Catholicism. And the minute they put the crown of the Pope on him, he literally fainted. Because energetically, the burden now of the Catholic Church and the Catholic religion, it's like all on him. And I honestly feel that that's the same when you're trying to do something monumental, especially in the magical world. How do you feel about that thought?
It is really, I mean, that's the same like with on any team effort. If you're like a team leader, it's the whole welfare of the team is on you. but especially when you're talking about magic, because you're dealing with people that there's a high rate of energy exchange in between people. And in a leadership position, everyone is literally depending on you, almost as if they're hanging from you. True. In a magical sense. I mean, you have their support to do the things that you want to do, but you also have to take care of them. It's not like having a harness with a team of horses where the team is pulling you. It's almost like being the harness itself, that you have to keep everybody together, because it's not just keep every individual up and running, but you also have to keep them all together at the same time, which isn't easy.
You know, here's a funny thing too, Wade. I know you're a Star Wars fan just as I am. And I like to pick at the ideologies and the thought systems in Star Wars. And do you want to know why it was so much easier to run the Empire than it would be to be like a Jedi against the Empire? Do you know why?
Well, they had a chain of command.
Yes, and they had an actual fucking military. You know what I mean? That, like, if you were in the Empire and you were like Sidious or Vader, you were the Force users, but you didn't need to do the nitty-gritty shit. Versus Luke was alone. Yoda was alone. You know what I mean? So it's like anything that moves is all through you. And it's been an observation of mine. The shelf life of people who engage in magical politics, it's not long. I mean, in the end, the hermitage is real. Sometimes people just say, screw all this, and just go to somewhere like the Dagobah system where you live and just disconnect. Now, the question I want to ask you is the disconnect something like you do it permanently, or is it just something like you're on hiatus until you get that call to come back?
It really depends. Sometimes you just dip out and disappear. You know, I did. I came up here. I was gone. People from the Bay Area, they thought I was dead.
I did too.
I up and fucking vanished into the redwoods, and I love it. Kind of coming back around now, and I guess there's some magical groups up here I have no interest in joining. But yeah, sometimes you go and you stay gone.
You know, it brings me to my next question, Wade. Knowing that it's such a fucking headache, why? Why would we even bother then? Like, I have an answer, but I wanted to ask you that first. Like, why put up the new Jedi Order? Why put up a new group? Why do something monumental like the new Magickal or something like, or TarotconPh? What would the value be of a magician doing something like that?
We go where the road takes us. Sometimes it's, sometimes your road is like, okay, I'm going this way. This is what I do. I know my will. I'm doing my thing. I've made my crossing. I'm at an equilibrium, and I'm just going along. And it takes you to a place where they're like, oh, yeah, here's the call again. Now we need someone who's got your exact skills, your experience. Basically, we need you to make this thing happen. And if that's where the road takes you, that's where the road takes you.
I'm going to quote one of my mentors, Claire Sage, who said, did you really think you had a choice? You know what I mean? Because, like, I like to refer to magicians, real magicians, not wannabes. Like, you're basically, or people who are at least more spiritually enlightened. Basically, you are enlisting into the army of the universe, okay? You were a soldier. So when you get your mission orders, you can't tell Central Command, I don't want to be deployed there. You're going to get fucking court-martialed. But in the magical world, if you get, I don't know what we call it as magicians, but you get the call to do something. And then you're just like, huh? Like, the fuck was that? You ignore that, your life's going to go to shit. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you'll find yourself doing it anyway.
After your life has gone to shit.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that you're like, well, okay, I'm driving down this highway. I'm going across a bridge. Now, I could continue driving on the highway, or I could just turn the car and go into the water. Mm-hmm. Well, great. Now you're in the water. You climb out, and you're back on the bridge, but now you're walking.
You know, like I recall when the concept of TarotCon got to me. I just got out of 2022, which was the worst year of my life. So far, 2024 has proven to be one of the best. And I was just recovering. I felt like I just got my ass kicked and I was just learning to walk again. And I attended this event with some of my students. We did like kind of like a tiny psychic fair at this fucking haunted ass raunchy hotel. And all of my students, myself included, got wiped. We were all sick in bed the next week. And it wasn't that following weekend. And it wasn't COVID. It was just some weird, something just bitch slapped us. And I got the worst of it. And I remember during that time, I got so bad, I had like a bulge on my throat because one of my tonsils was like infected beyond belief. So I couldn't drink water. I could take barely sips. It hurt like a bitch to swallow. I couldn't eat. I couldn't take anything in. Couldn't move. So I was basically like in a hyper fasted state for like 2 to 3 days, you know? And then I was delirious with fever and I was hyper fasted. And like, when that happens to you, that's like the universe kind of like pushing the pause button on you. Like, no, you fucking stay put. And I recall it was during that time of me being really, really like wired out because basically you are fasting, and the faster you are, the more fasted you are, the more receptive you are psychically, the more able you are to receive transmissions. I got a very clear message from the universe, and it simply said, "You will do the first ever Philippine TarotCon." And I was just like, huh? The fuck? I was like, how am I gonna do that? And why? I don't want to do that because it's a pain in the ass. It's a lot of work and it's a pain in the ass. I'm not saying it's not meaningful, but it is a pain in the ass to do. I'd rather go out drinking with you. And the same transmission just said, because if you don't do it, somebody else is gonna do it and they're gonna fuck it up. So I'm like, okay, I guess. You know, I just accepted. And like a week later, I talked to Marcus Katz, and he was like, I would love to fly to the Philippines and do this with you. So I'm like, okay, the way is being shown. And that's where I was like, okay, this is something else. I can't just walk away from it because whatever that voice was, I don't want to hear it again saying, I thought I told you. You know what I mean? So because you don't listen to that voice, you're going to get it. And that's the funny thing, because when it comes to like doing all this stuff, putting up the event or putting up the circle or taking on students, when all with regards to magical politics, most of the time, they're not even choosing to do it. We're not really doing it for money most of the time. We're actually like the last guy who would want to do it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, I'd rather
how they say with politics or political power, the people who want it least are the only ones that are worthy of it.
And the ones who want it the most should never have it.
Ever.
And here's another thing I was going to tell you, though. But let's say you're in that position. Okay, you're in that position. You're the big honcho. Like, if I'm not mistaken, in OTO they have that guy called Sabazius. What's his name again?
Sabazius.
I mean, I don't know much about him, but all I know is that he's the head honcho. How do you know it's time for you to step away? You know, because like my theory is this. I've told this to people, especially my detractors. I said, you guys don't like me. You guys think I'm an asshole. You think I'm a megalomaniacal person. Fine. The easiest way, I'll give you the blueprint to get rid of me. Do better. If you do better than I do, then I'll have all the reason to get out of the kitchen. You know what I mean? If you're doing better, then I don't need to do this crap. I can step aside and you guys can take over. But until then, I'm going to sit on this throne. So with your perspective, when is it time to get off the throne? When is it time to say, yeah, I think I've done my share?
I have an old saying, Jesus, not Elvis.
Jesus, not Elvis.
Jesus, not Elvis. Jesus left the scene, allegedly escaped to India and all this other stuff. There's a whole thing behind that.
Yeah.
When he was 33, at the height of his power, he vanished. Supposedly died, was taken to heaven, blah, 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 the whole roll away the stone, the tomb, and all that other stuff. He took off when he had kind of frozen his legacy at a moment of peak power.
Mm-hmm.
Elvis was still dancing his fat ass around on the stage in sequin jumpsuits when he could barely walk and needed to wear a diaper. And that's how people remember him. So you always want to go out at the absolute peak.
That's very.
It's hard to know when that is. What's that?
Very Kurt Cobainish, right? He said he'd rather flare up than go down in flames, right?
Yeah. It's hard to know when your peak is, but when you feel you've gotten to the point of when you're running out of goals, or if you've got you kind of know when you're like, okay, I've done the things I wanted to do. I did my classes, wrote my books. I had this event. I've got some people to carry on for me. I can just cheese it. That's when you go.
But let's say for those who are getting into this, and let's say you're just new in your commission, you just took on a new role, a Magister Templi or a coven leader or an event manager. What are some things you recommend to them to keep their energy sustained so that they can put up with the energetic demands of being in that level of leadership?
Delegate. I've seen people that will, like the first couple Pantheacons, Glenn was trying to do everything herself, and it was quickly we all figured out, it's like, no, you gotta delegate stuff. And she took a lot of her experience from the Ancient Ways Festival, that you have people that are in charge of certain things, and that way it doesn't burn you out, and you can also enjoy the event. You have to know how to delegate things.
I want to throw down one. The magic is only as good as the health of the body. Some people think, well, I'm doing something. I have all the right to let myself go. I don't need to train. I don't need to eat properly. I'll be the first to tell you that's not the way to go. Last year, that's what happened to me. Like towards the last 3 months before TarotCon, I just said, fuck it. No workout, no jiu-jitsu, no diet. I'm just going to fucking lie on my bed, finish my book, and eat McDonald's because I need all my energy intact. That made it worse. So find a way to squeeze in a little bit of self-care, be it through meditation, eating cleaner, working out. Doesn't need to be like Spartan workout. Just keep the engine running. Because if the body fails at the peak of your power, it's game over. It's as simple as that. Another thing, too, which I think is very important, is to have a safe space where your mental health needs could be shared safely. Like, I'm very thankful to Marcus for this, because this year's TarotCon, more than once, he had one-on-one sessions with me just so that I can vent my frustrations. Not as like Dr. Doom of the Philippines, but I'm like, I'm having this issue. I need a friend who knows what I'm going through. And he sat with me and he talked to me about it. And he said, Robert, I've been through this. I understand. There was no judgment. Now, had I have spoken to my team from last year about this, they would have used it as a means of coup d'etat-ing me. So it's important to talk to people who you know are there for you. You need that, you need that area to vent, that safe room where you can say, okay, I'm at my peak. Like day before the event this year, with the typhoon looming, it was like super typhoon level 3. They were saying they were really like, fanaticizing it in the news. I was with several people who were volunteering for the event the night before at Mysterium, and I said to them, number one, I am extremely stressed. I love you all, but I don't want any of you taking it personally if I'm going to be a dick. It's not your fault. But this fucking typhoon can make everything go to pod. So if I'm bitchy, it's not your fault. We'll be friends after this. But please, let's just win this one moment. So having that place where you can speak your feelings is very important. Is that something you recommend or no?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, and it's not just for events. I mean, you need this all the time. Mm-hmm. You need to have someone that you can just go and say, like, look, I've got something that I just need to discuss and kind of work through, and I don't need you to troubleshoot this for me. I just need you to listen while I talk it out. True. And I mean, we all need that person. It's not just for events. I mean, we need that every day.
And furthermore,
like, okay, even if it's just some dumbass idea that I've got people that I can go to and say, hey, look, I just need to talk this through and decide it's a bad idea instead of doing it.
Agreed. And I like to tell all of our viewers out there that, again, the term here is magical politics. So it means we can use magic. Okay. We can solicit magical help. So personally, on a practical level, for those of you who are leading, preparing, launching, organizing something, and it's taking the toll on you, really spruce up on your banishing rituals, because you don't want to go to sleep with that shit on you. That's number one. I mean, like the stress, you don't need that. You need good rest. So if you could perform your own version of a banishing ritual like me, it would be the LBRP. Perfect. Number two, asking your friends for magical help in their own way goes a long way. Like, let me give you an example. During TarotCon's preparation, those of you who don't know, my social media got hoodwinked because a lot of douchebags were reporting the TarotCon pages as fake. And the algorithm, basically due to the mass number of reports, decided to auto block me and everything I ever posted on social media. So imagine, that was 15 years worth of stuff and it was gone. And people I was talking to were telling me the chances of you getting that back are slim to none, because you don't talk to a person. It's just the algorithm. And most of the time it just brushes you off. And it was depressing because no Magic.tv, no Tarot Thursday. So it's like, shit, I've been nut punched here, seriously. Then one of my students, God bless her, named Artemis, she said, I know you're scared. I'm getting a message. And she said, go to Hecate. But she recommended me to talk to somebody else. And I said, your message is correct. I think Hecate could help. But I'm not going to go to who you recommend. I'm going to go to the guy I know, knows a lot about Hecate. And I went to Jack Grail. I said, Jack, I'm not asking for much, but just anything, just some goodwill. Can I post on the group that we're part of, just asking for just some positive juju? Because this is really depressing. Imagine, this was like a month or two before TarotCon. We can't market anymore. Imagine how, oh my God, how nightmarish it could be. It was like a communications disruption. So Jack was such a gentleman about it. God bless his soul. He said, Robert, by all means, feel free, and I will send some good juju your way. So I went to the group and I said, dear everyone, this is what's going on. Your prayers and your good wishes would mean a lot to me. 1 hour later, my account was back. 1 fucking hour later. So I was like, okay. See, that's the magical politics side of things. I know maybe not all of the people there gave a shit, but there was enough to cause that change in current to make it happen. You get what I'm saying? So like, you're a magician, and like if Wade has a big event, anything short of me being there by his side, which I would prefer, there's nothing preventing me from sending Reiki to his event or lighting a candle for him or asking Belial, please send your power to Wade. It's me showing my magical support. Because at the end of the day, if Wade says, did you support me? Fuck yes. Fuck yes. I have the proof of it. I know I did. And he will feel it. And quite frankly, do not underestimate the power of your friendships in the magical community, because I really felt it. I really felt it, bro.
And support isn't always positive.
Mm-hmm.
There was, it reminds me of, there's an incident, it's a few years back. A friend of mine was in a coven, and she usually ended up hosting all of the events, the rituals, the esbats and everything, but she wasn't the high priestess.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she noticed that the high priestess never really took the time to put her best foot forward in leading the coven. She would show up late. She would have she wouldn't memorize her lines for the ritual. She would just be everyone else knew their parts, and but she would just read it off a piece of paper, like she wasn't really committing.
Yeah.
And I gave her some advice, and the book itself has a lot of mixed reviews, has kind of a mixed reputation, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, but it's the 48 Laws of Power.
Great book.
It's everyone has strong opinions on it. They're not always good. So I gave her some advice out of the 48 Laws of Power. And so the next time they had this ritual, and it was one of the Sabbaths. It was a big one. And the high priestess shows up late, and she comes in. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't bring something to share after. I got in such a hurry, blah, blah, blah." And my friend said, "It's no problem. I've got someone else who knows your part and will do your job for you in this ritual." And she completely sidelined the high priestess of her own coven, who got to sit and watch the other people really blow it out of the water, one of their best Sabbats ever. And the thing is, after that, the high priestess was on point.
Mm-hmm.
She was leading. She saw how easily she could be replaced at the level she was working at.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw that she realized that it was actually hurting the coven.
Exactly.
And she realized, like, okay, I need to get my shit together. And she did. And that seemed to me, in the end, it turned out to be like a real show of support for the entire coven, but also for the high priestess, because she wasn't unlocking her potential.
It was a whipping the dog session, basically.
Kind of.
Sometimes people need that. I mean, you'd be surprised that pain or threat of something like that can be a very positive motivator. You know, like right now, if you and I are like, okay, life is okay, nothing, but like if there's some sort of intergalactic demonic invasion, all of a sudden we're going to be on our A games. I call it Dragon Ball Z syndrome. If you ever watched Dragon Ball Z, you know, when the good times are there, nobody's training. But like if Frieza is coming, they train their asses off and they're at peak power when he gets there. So the threat of something like that is very powerful. It's very powerful. And in addition to that, I wanted to add some pointers that I learned from the Marcus Katz. And before I forget, I'm a dick for forgetting. I wanted to thank from the bottom of my heart the support, the love, and the care that Marcus Katz of the Tarosophy Tarot Association showed, and that Naomi Ozaniek also showed, and also the support that Anima Noira showed. Anima Noira showed up in the Philippines. She was here. And she taught some of my girls some women empowerment, shadow empowerment. I think she's a wonderful example of that. And I'm looking forward to hosting her again. So it was an interesting thing to see, like, one of Belial's chosen was there. I'm like, wow, this place was really represented. But going back to it, some things Marcus taught me. When we were first conceptualizing TarotCon, I said, well, Marcus, should we unite the clans? All the tarot people come into one clan. And he was like, you will not unite the clans. And I'm like, well, why not? It's for the own good. And that's where I learned that even if it's for the greater good, not everyone has got their egos in check to support something for the greater good. Like, for example, the United Nations. Not all countries are part of the United Nations. You know what I mean? Most are, but not all. But I think all countries are answerable to the United Nations, but not all of them are members. You know what I'm saying? Number two, Marcus wrote this. Expect negative feedback. Like, people will say, who is you to do this? Who do you think you are? Like, he was telling me what he went through in his own experience doing tarot cons. And that's true, because when you are rocking the boat, the people, the old guard, will be threatened by the presence of the new guard. You know what I'm saying? They will always think, like, who's this whippersnapper? You know, they should show respect. We were here first. But if, like, you're just sitting on the throne, but nothing's getting done, you're a lame duck. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Number three, most importantly, do it authentically. If you're putting up a front and trying to be something that you're not, it's going to be found out. It's going to be found out, and people are going to say you're fake, you're full of shit, and then your credibility is out the window. Anything you want to throw down on that, Wade?
You know, honestly, there's a way to bring the old guard around when you have, because this was the death of Pantheacon, and it was terrible. It died a horrible death, but what you ended up having was you had some of the old guard that they decided they were going to crap all over the new ones coming in, all over this next generation of witches that were coming around. And it got to be extremely political. And it ended up just blowing up the entire conference, because that was the last one that I was at. And I could see the way it was going. But you have, the thing is that if you have a new thing, it's good to bring the old guard around and say, like, look, we're going to give you a chance to offer your guidance. We respect your wisdom. We respect your experience. But also, we can do this without you.
True.
So you give them the chance. It's like, look, here's your chance to go out on a big note, on a high note, and you can have your, Jesus, not Elvis. This will be your chance to come in and say, like, look, here is, I have the chance to offer your blessing to the next generation of people who are going to continue doing this into the future, and then step aside, or we can just do it without you. But what happened to Pantheacon was the old guard was coming in. They're like, no, we're going to impose our beliefs, our restrictions, our hang-ups on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it became a huge issue, and that was the death of Pantheacon, unfortunately.
I got to share this with some people from experience. The first TarotCon, I led it like the Avengers. Like, I was working with other Avengers, and we all had our ideas. I was trying to be a team player. However, the other Avengers in that time, they sucked. This TarotCon, I said, I had to tell Marcus in advance, I'm Dr. Dooming this. Victor Von Doom. Okay? In other words, I'm a dictator for this. And believe it or not, it was infinitely better. Because it's like, I always believe, if you're going to do something grandiose, there has to be less red tape. You get what I'm saying? And ask forgiveness, not permission. Because a good example, last year, I really wanted to platform LGBTQ, okay? Because they're natural allies of the new age occult community. And I have a lot of friends who are readers who are members of the LGBTQ. So one of the first thing I said at this Avengers meeting was, I'd like to give LGBTQ a platform to share their advocacy. I believe in it. I support it. I'm an ally. And I thought that my co-conspirators would have said that's a great idea. They were like, oh no, don't do that. It's controversial. You don't want that connected to the tarot. I'm like, tarot is controversial. You know what I mean? Like, why would we not support these people? They're natural allies. I mean, come on. I mean, there's nothing more normal than love. Why can't we platform them? And really, I got outvoted of my own event. I got outvoted for that. Something as beautiful as that, I got outvoted. So this year, I was like, that was the first thing I said. As supreme ruler, this is fucking happening. Okay? Because it was wrong. It wasn't there last year. I'm going to platform up to 3, if not 4 LGBTQ speakers, not just because they are part of that community, but because they know what they're talking about. Because, that was me being Dr. Doom. Versus if I did it, okay, let's agree, let's be a council, let's be democratic. Shit gets slowed down. If it gets bigger down the line, if they're shareholders, then fine. Another thing I also noticed too is that when you're doing an event like this or anything like that, you've got to get away from people who have hidden conceitedness. What do I mean by conceitedness? That they care more about being liked by others than getting the job done. Like, oh, I don't want to call Wade about asking about his workshop because he might be in a bad mood and he might get upset at me. I said, that doesn't get me the result I needed. You get what I'm saying? So in other words, you're more concerned about looking good than you are about getting the job done. At the end of the day, if the job isn't done, you fail. Simple as that. But if the job is done, then you can see, well, how well was it done and who's really to give credit for that. Because people are going to hate you either way. What do you think?
Well, there is room in the world for benevolent dictatorships. It's just they have to be benevolent. It really depends on the goal. Mm-hmm. If your goal is to just make as much money as possible and scrape everybody else off, I've seen magical groups do that. and it's kind of gross.
Mhm.
I've seen countries do that. I've seen countries doing that, and it's kind of gross. But yeah, it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to make an enjoyable event for everybody, where everybody benefits, by all means, take charge.
Yeah, that's another thing too. If you're budding, okay, if the group is still small, if it hasn't really gotten enough to fill a system into it, making things too democratically done will bog down the process. This happened years ago, even for me. Like, I remember years ago, and it actually happened with my own ex-wife. When I was still formulating Mysterium, we had an attorney working with us who was one of our students, and I was asking her about getting the organization registered with the SEC in the Philippines at the time. And she said it's going to take 6 to 8 months average to get that registration. And I asked her, legally, can we operate without that? She said, yes, you can, because you're at the time, your reasoning will be our papers are being filed. Okay, as long as your papers are being filed, there's nothing to prevent you from operating. During that time, my ex-wife, or my wife then, actually said we should wait till the SEC papers are done. I said, then what will we do in this 8-time period? You know what I mean? Nothing would have been done. That's burnt. And I see now she was more afraid of being legally liable than being proactive about growing the community. You get what I'm saying? So when you're leading a community and it's still brand new, sometimes you really gotta be that dictator. You gotta be that, not for long. I mean, eventually you want to give it to good people, but you want to be that one who says, okay, the buck stops at me. All right, you got to be the executive, because if it goes to too many hands of decisions, you will get literally caught up in useless bureaucracy and democracy. Like years ago, when I still worked for the government here in the Philippines, my boss was a former general, great guy, and my office was right next to the bathroom on the ground floor. So I went to the admin. There was no toilet paper in the office, in the bathroom, none. And I went to the admin guys and I said, "Hey, can we get like toilet paper? So you got to request budget. Request budget for toilet paper?" I was like, "Shit. Okay, so what do I do?" And they gave me this long list of people that I have to have, sign off just so they could release budget or bring actual toilet paper. Okay, so I took it to my operating officer. I took it to his officer. Everybody on my line of things signed off on it. It was logical. Toilet paper. When it got to admin, somebody cock blocked it and denied it. So I was like, "You're denying toilet paper. This is ridiculous." Karma hit. Like a week later, the boss was in a conference and had a tummy ache, went to the bathroom. There was no toilet paper, so he called me out. "Ruben, why is there no toilet paper in the bathroom?" And I said, "Sir, look, it was denied." He took 1,000 pesos out of his wallet, used this all on toilet paper. Somebody's getting fired tomorrow. And lo and behold, somebody from the red tape of it got kicked out. So if it's something as simple as that, and that's just toilet paper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What other shit? You know what I mean? Like last year, there was another really ridiculous thing. One of my students is a wonderful tattoo artist, and she was one of the first people to say, "I'm going to get a booth. I want to be at TarotCon." She actually did this tattoo at TarotCon. And I was excited. She cashed. It was a sale. I was thankful for it. One of the organizers, thinking he's a fucking know-it-all, said, "I think that due to health code reasons, we should not allow them to do tattoos, and we should only allow them to sell vouchers." I'm like, who the fuck is gonna buy a voucher for a tattoo at TarotCon? They want to get inked at TarotCon. It's part of the experience. Luckily, the other members said, "No, you're being too anal about that shit." But this is like people trying to be smart but sounding like idiots in the process, and they exist. You get what I'm saying? And this is the shit you all have to deal with in magical politics and any kind of leadership scenarios.
Oh yeah, I mean, they talk about the chain being as strong as its weakest link, but if you forge that chain into an iron bar, it's a whole lot more useful.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Especially if everybody's united in purpose, united in vision. So yeah, I just wanted to also announce to everybody out there that probably by 2025, at the launch of 2025, Wade and I will be launching the formal Magic.tv website. We did get the domain, so we're looking forward to that. I've got an amazing web developer who's going to be doing it. We're going to be putting a lot of our shows, a lot of our reels there with some of the greatest people we've had. And Wade and I are going to have our own corners to regularly update articles. Wade's Corner, Rob's Corner. We're going to see, I'm going to ask the web developer how we're going to do that, but it's going to be interactive. I'm going to see how we can see that the live shows are actually broadcast there, so you don't need to go to YouTube or Facebook. But hopefully by early 2025, Magic.tv will be live on the internet. I'm very thankful, Wade. This has been one of the best years of my life, and it's because of you. You've been a dear friend. I'm happy you got a copy of my incomplete deck. I'm sorry about that. The gremlins took some of his cards, but you're going to get those. Shout out to my brother, Shea Belay. I mean, thank you for messaging me too. I mean, I hope everything's going good with you there. To Marcus Katz and to Naomi Ozaniek, you guys helped me make monumental history this year. I love you dearly. So anything else you want to say before we wrap up this episode, brother?
You know, honestly, I wasn't chapped about the cards because I interpret every phenomenon as a particular dealing of God with my soul. So the ace through 5 of pens, I've been keeping a particular attention on that to see what that's about. Mm-hmm. So you never know. It's an unusual event that since the decks are printed complete, to have one arrive incomplete, something is going on with those particular cards. So I'm kind of looking at that.
Well, those are the swords cards. So if it's the ace through 5, you're probably going to get your magical battlefield promotion soon, because that's like you've proven people wrong. And shouting out to all the people who've made Magic.tv a success. We love you all. I'm going to be lining up probably one more guest before the end of the year. But yes, Magic.tv is here to stay. We're going to be going into the next season. Just like I said, we took a hiatus because of TarotCon, but we always come back. This show, of course, is always in honor of its patron, Belial. You rock. I felt the power and greater things to come. So, Wade, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I'm actually good.
All right. Good night, everyone. We love you. See you next episode. Don't go anywhere.